My siblings laughed when I took the old store instead of cash. 2 years later, when the new highway exit made it prime real estate, they realized their $2 million mistake. I stood in the dusty aisles of Miller's General Store, running my fingers along shelves that hadn't changed since I was a child. The ancient cash register still sat on the counter, its brass finish dulled by decades of use. Sunlight filtered through windows that needed cleaning, casting patterns on the worn wooden floor where my father had taught me to stock shelves 30 years ago. "Sarah, you can't be serious." My brother Michael's voice cut through my nostalgia. "The property assessor valued this dump at less than $50,000. Your share of Dad's savings is worth 6 times that." I turned to face my siblings, Michael in his expensive suit, Patricia in her designer dress, both looking at me like I've lost my mind. They've flown in from their respective coastal cities for the reading of our father's will, already arguing over how to split his considerable liquid assets. "I've made my decision," I said quietly. "You two can split the money. I'm taking the store." Patricia threw up her hands in exasperation. "This is ridiculous. You're giving up $300,000 for a failing business in the middle of nowhere. The place barely breaks even." She wasn't wrong about the numbers. Miller's General Store had been struggling for years, hanging on mainly because our father refused to close the place where he'd raised his family. The small town of Cedar Grove had been slowly dying as younger people moved away, leaving behind an aging population that could barely keep a few remaining businesses afloat. "It's not about the money," I tried to explain. "This store was Dad's life. It meant something to him." "Dad's dead," Michael said bluntly. "And sentiment doesn't pay bills. Take the cash, Sarah. Be smart for once in your life." I felt the familiar sting of his condescension. Michael, the successful investment banker, Patricia, the high-powered attorney, and me, just the middle child who'd stayed in Cedar Grove, helping Dad run the store while getting my business degree from the local college. "The decision's made," I said firmly. "Mr. Harrison has the paperwork ready at his office. We can sign this afternoon." Patricia shook her head, her perfect blonde hair swaying. "Fine. Throw your inheritance away, but don't come crying to us when this place finally goes under." They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and disapproval. The bell over the door chiming their exit just as it had thousands of times before. I sank onto the old stool behind the counter, remembering how Dad used to sit there, greeting every customer by name. "You sure about this, Sarah?" Tom Harrison, our family's longtime lawyer, had stayed behind. He'd known me since I was a kid stealing penny candy from the jar that still sat on the counter. "Did you know about the highway proposal?" I asked instead of answering. He blinked, obviously surprised. "The interstate expansion, it's just a rumor. The state won't make a decision for months, maybe years." I pulled a folder from my bag and handed it to him. Inside were detailed maps, environmental impact studies, and most importantly, the preliminary approval for a new highway exit that would dump traffic less than a quarter mile from Miller's General Store. "Where did you get these?" Tom asked, flipping through pages. "I didn't spend all those years just stocking shelves," I said. "While Dad ran the store, I got my business degree, did market research, made connections with the city planning office. That highway isn't a rumor. It's happening. They're announcing it next month." Understanding dawned on his face. "And when they do, property values in the area will skyrocket." I finished, "especially commercial lots with good road access like this one." He looked around the store with new eyes. "Does anyone else know?" "Just the planning committee and a few investors they're courting. I found out because I've been attending the town council meetings for years. Nobody pays attention to the quiet one taking notes in the back row." Tom chuckled. "You always the smart one, no matter what your siblings think." He sobered. "But Sarah, even with the highway coming, turning this place around won't be easy. The building needs work. The inventory is outdated." "I know." I stood up walking the aisles I knew by heart. "But I've got plans, big ones." I did too. While Michael and Patricia have been building their careers in bigger cities, I've been studying, learning, preparing. Dad might not have understood my endless questions about supply chains and profit margins, but he'd supported me anyway. He even paid for extra business classes when I expressed interest in modernizing the store's operations. Your father knew, Tom said suddenly, about the highway. That's why he changed his will last month. I stopped surprised. What? He left the store entirely up to your choice, said you'd know what to do with it. Tom smiled. Guess he was right. A lump formed in my throat. Dad and I hadn't always understood each other, but he believed in me when no one else did. Now I had the chance to prove that faith wasn't misplaced. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and planning. Michael and Patricia left town immediately after the will was settled, making it clear they wanted nothing to do with my foolish decision. I didn't mind. For the first time in my life, I was completely in charge of my own destiny. I started small cleaning and organizing, taking inventory of what worked and what needed to change. The store had good bones, solid construction, a prime location at the town's main intersection, and plenty of parking space that would become invaluable once the highway exit opened. But it needed work, a lot of work. You're crazy, Ben Tucker told me when I hired his construction company to renovate. Ben had been my high school sweetheart before life took us in different directions. Now he ran the most respected construction firm in 3 counties. Probably, I agreed, showing him my plans. But look at these drawings. Modern retail space in front, warehouse capability in back. New loading dock, expanded parking. Thinking bigger than a general store? Much bigger. I pulled out the highway plans. See this exit? In 2 years, this will be the main route into town. We'll have thousands of cars passing by daily. The store needs to be ready. Ben studied the drawings. His contractor's mind already working. It's a solid plan, Sarah, but it'll cost a lot. I've got investors lined up. Another surprise for my siblings. While they've been dismissing me as the quiet one watching the store, I've been building relationships with local business leaders. People who believe in Cedar Grove's future. Like me, Ben said quietly. Our eyes met for a moment and I remembered why I'd once thought we'd spend our lives together, but that was a long time ago. The work needs to be done before the highway announcement. I said all business again. Once that happens, every contractor in the county will be booked solid. Ben nodded. We can start next week. But Sarah, he hesitated. Your siblings, they're going to be angry when they realize what you've done. They're already angry. I shrugged. Might as well give them a real reason. The renovation began on a Monday. By Wednesday, half the town was talking about my foolishness, investing money in a dying business in a dying town. I ignored them, focusing on the future I could see so clearly. The old shelving came out first, replaced by modern retail fixtures. The creaky wooden floor was restored to its original glory. New lighting transformed the space from dim and dated to bright and welcoming. Every change hurt my dwindling savings, but I knew it would be worth it. You're bleeding money. My account warned me after the first month. The store's income can't support these improvements. It will, I promised. Just wait. I worked 18-hour days running the store while supervising renovations. The old-timers who'd been shopping here for decades grumbled about the changes, but even they had to admit the place looked better. Younger families started coming in, attracted by the cleaner space and modernized inventory. Then came the first test of my resolve. Sarah, Mrs. Jenkins, my nearest neighbor, caught me as I was closing up one night. I heard a rumor about developers wanting to buy a property along Main Street. My heart skipped. Oh, offering good money, they say. Above market value. She peered at me. Had any offers? I had 3 in the past week, each higher than the last. Word was leaking about the highway, though nothing official had been announced. Not interested in selling, I said firmly. But surely, with all the money you're spending on renovations, I just smiled and wished her good night. Let them think I was foolish. Soon they'd understand. The next morning, I found Michael waiting in the parking lot, looking distinctly out of place in his $1,000 suit. I hear you're turning down purchase offers, he said without preamble. Hello to you too, brother. Sarah, be reasonable. I've got a client willing to pay 3 times what this place is worth. Take the money and walk away. I unlocked the store's front door, breathing in the familiar scent of wood and memories. Not interested. Damn it, Sarah. He grabbed my arm. I'm trying to help you. Dad's gone. You don't have to prove anything anymore. I pulled away. You never understood him, Michael or me. This isn't about proving anything. It's about building something. Building what? A general store in a town that's practically a ghost town. You'll see. I left him standing in the parking lot as confused as he'd always been by the sister who didn't fit his worldview. But Michael's visit was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, more developers came calling. Some tried to charm me, others to intimidate. Patricia even flew in from Los Angeles, armed with legal arguments about responsibility and missed opportunities. I turned them all down. The renovations continued eating through my savings and the small business loan I'd secured. Some days, watching the numbers in my account drop, I wondered if my siblings were right. If I was being foolish, throwing good money after bad. Then I'd look at the highway plans hidden away in my office and remember what Dad used to say. Sometimes you have to believe in something before anyone else can see it. I believed in Miller's General Store in Cedar Grove, in myself, and soon, everyone else would too. But that's another part of the story. The morning of the highway announcement arrived with a mix of fog and anticipation. I stood in Miller's newly renovated storefront, watching town council members and state officials set up for their press conference in the park across the street. Television vans lined Main Street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like mechanical flowers. Quite a crowd, Ben observed joining me at the window. The renovation was nearly complete, though we kept the iconic Miller sign. Some things were worth preserving. Wait until they make the announcement, I said quietly. This is nothing compared to what's coming. My phone buzzed. Michael calling for the third time that morning. I ignored it just as I'd ignored Patricia's increasingly threatening emails about family responsibility and fiscal insanity. They figured out something was happening in Cedar Grove, but they were still in the dark about the scale of it. The store's new automatic doors whispered open, admitting Tom Harrison. Our family lawyer looked carried, his bow tie slightly askew. Sarah, we need to talk. Your siblings have filed an injunction to prevent me from selling the property. I smiled. Let me guess. They're claiming Dad wasn't of sound mind when he changed the will. Tom blinked. How did you? Because I know my siblings. And because 3 different developers called this morning, hinting they'd help fight any legal challenges if I agreed to sell to them. This is serious, Sarah. They've hired Blackwood and Reed. Top real estate attorneys. Let them waste their money. I turned from the window surveying the transformed space. The old general store had become something entirely new. Modern retail displays, a gourmet coffee bar, and local artisan goods mixed with everyday necessities. The warehouse space in back was ready too, though no one knew what for yet. You're not planning to sell at all, are you? Tom asked slowly. Tom, what's the largest retailer in Cedar Grove? He frowned. Well, since the Walmart closed last year, I guess Miller's is now that you've expanded. And how many delivery services operate in the county? None since the pandemic killed that startup last winter. I smiled. Wrong. One starts operations today. Understanding dawned on his face, the warehouse space, the loading docks. Miller's isn't just a store anymore, I explained. It's a distribution hub. We'll serve 3 counties delivering everything from groceries to hardware. The highway exit makes us the perfect location, but the announcement hasn't even. The sound of microphone feedback cut him off. Outside, the mayor was approaching the podium, flanked by state transportation officials. The crowd, much larger now, pressed forward eagerly. I didn't need to hear the speech. I've been preparing for this moment for months. Instead, I watched faces in the crowd as the mayor revealed the interstate expansion plans complete with Cedar Grove's new exit ramp, conveniently located just down the road from Miller's. The reaction was immediate. People gasped, pointed, already turning to look at nearby properties with new eyes. Property values would triple at minimum. Commercial lots like mine would be worth even more. My phone exploded with notifications. Michael and Patricia had obviously heard the news. A text from Michael popped up. Do not assail to anyone. Call me and BDALI. I deleted it without reading the rest. Sarah, Ben called from the back. You've got visitors. I turned to find 3 men in expensive suits being admitted through the loading dock entrance. I recognized them immediately. Executives from national market chain, one of the largest retail corporations in the country. Miss Miller, the oldest one, stepped forward, hand extended. I'm James Whitmore, Vice President of Acquisitions for NNC. We've been following your operation with great interest. Of course, they had. I've made sure word of my renovations and expansion reached the right ears. Gentlemen, I kept my voice professionally neutral. This is quite a surprise. Is it? Whitmore smiled. You've positioned yourself brilliantly. Modern facility, strategic location, distribution capabilities, exactly what we look for in new franchise locations. And there it was, the real reason for their visit. National Market Chain had been trying to establish a presence in this part of the state for years, but property costs and local opposition had stymied them. Now with the highway coming, we're prepared to make a very generous offer. Another executive chimed in, both for the property and for ongoing franchise rights. I gestured to my office. Let's discuss it. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Their initial offer was impressive. Enough to make Michael and Patricia's inheritance shares look like pocket change, but I had my own terms. Miller's keeps its name, I insisted. We maintain local control over inventory and operations, and the distribution network serves independent retailers too, not just national market chain stores. Whitmore frowned. That's unusual. Normally, our franchise agreements are more standardized. This is an abnormal situation. I laid out my market research showing population projections, traffic patterns, retail gaps, and surrounding communities. You're not just buying a store location. You're buying a ready-made distribution network in an underserved region. One that's about to experience massive growth. They huddled and whispered consultation while I waited calmly. Finally, Whitmore spoke. Your terms are acceptable with some modifications. We'll have our lawyers draw up. My lawyers will draw up the papers, I corrected. I believe you know the firm, Blackwood and Reed. Whitmore's eyebrows shot up. Your siblings' attorneys? Not anymore. As of this morning, they work for me. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right business plan and profit projections. After the executives left, Ben found me in the office staring at the old photo of Dad behind the counter. You planned this whole thing, he said. It wasn't a question. The renovations, the distribution setup, even letting word leak to National Market Chain. I had a good teacher. I touched Dad's photograph. He always said opportunity comes to those who prepare for it. Sarah, Tom burst in waving his phone. You won't believe. Blackwood and Reed just withdrew from your siblings' case. They're representing you now. Along with handling the National Market Chain contracts, I smiled at his astonished expression. Amazing how quickly top law firms change allegiance when they realize which side has the better position. My phone buzzed again. Patricia, this time, probably having just heard about our lawyers jumping ship. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. How dare you? She shrieked without preamble. You manipulative little. You knew about the highway all along. You last think you were being sentimental, taking that worthless store while we got the cash. But you played us. No, Patricia. I let you be exactly who you are. People so convinced of your own superiority that you never bothered to look deeper. Just like you never bothered to understand Dad or this town or me. We're contesting everything, she seethed. The will, the store ownership, all of it. Michael's already talking to other attorneys. Tell Michael to check his email first, I suggested mildly. The one from his biggest investment client, they've signed an exclusive shipping contract with Miller's Distribution Services. Amazing how much influence he can have when you control the only distribution hub in 3 counties. Silence. Then you wouldn't cancel the lawsuits, Patricia. Stop trying to interfere, or Michael's client won't be the only one reconsidering their business relationships. I ended the call to find Ben and Tom staring at me with a mixture of admiration and shock. Remind me never to underestimate you, Ben said finally. I looked out the window at the dispersing crowd, already imagining the changes coming to Cedar Grove. The highway exit would bring new businesses, new families, new life to our fading town. And at the heart of it all would be Miller's, not just a general store anymore, but the center of a retail and distribution network that would serve the entire region. My siblings have laughed when I chose the store over cash. They dismissed me as sentimental, foolish, stuck in the past. But I'd seen the future coming, and I prepared for